Hey guys. All right. In case you happen to be on your phone or you get my alerts, no, your phone's not going crazy and wonky. This thing has just been trying to make it a nightmare for me to record this video again. Shocker. So I'm just gonna go at it again. But I wanted to start off with kind of touching where I left off before talking about false memories and false memory foundation. That what is actually happening when these memories start to come back to people. They are not always, ritualistically based or um, what it is our body's natural ability to guard us from severe trauma. So most of what you will find, and at least what I have researched, because this is what I research and this is what I've experienced personally with loved ones in my life, is severe trauma from childhood generally. Most often it's of a sexual nature, something that just really traumatizes you to where our bodies have this natural built-in God-given function to disassociate, to pull our consciousness away from the event that is actually happening so that we can survive, these extremely traumatic things that no one should have to experience. People have also experienced this kind of dissociation when they're going through car accidents or very, near-death experiences. But it's just a natural process that the body does, the brain does, to guard yourself from experiencing that and to be able to categorize it in its own little filing cabinet, set aside waiting for the time when your psyche and your emotional state is ready to deal with it. And that can be very jarring for people. It can be very difficult. Sometimes they'll come back in little bits and pieces in dreams, and it won't quite seem real, but it's so much different. And as you begin to feel comfortable enough to work through it, more will come back. Other times people find themselves just immediately in that moment, and it can be like you're literally experiencing it again as if you were in that moment again. So if that is something that you are experiencing, I do highly encourage you to remind yourself that you are safe now. You are no longer in that space, to be able to bring yourself to that feeling of security so that you can process those emotions, so that you can bring everything back into healing and into alignment within your soul and within your psyche. Again, this is just a natural process that we have to deal with severe trauma. And unfortunately, through things like the Nazi boot camps and the concentration camps, they learned that you can actually weaponize this. So you can intentionally traumatize people, especially when they're younger, and actually split their psyche. And this ends up being dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. And what it is just that the consciousness actually fractures so that that memory is separated. And through things like MK Ultra, and I know that can be a trigger phrase for a lot of people, but again, please go and look. This was testified in Congress that this did happen, and it's real. So if that's where you need to start researching, I would encourage you to research there. But this is where they learn to weaponize that. And these scientists that came over for MK Ultra actually did come directly from the Nazis. They were the scientists and, brain power behind a lot of these concentration camps that were offered immunity and to come over here and use their brain power for us, kind of giving them this blanket of, oh, they weren't guilty, they were just following orders, order followers, when in reality, what a lot of the research is saying is that these people were actually very much, up near the top masterminds of these disgusting, horrible things. And anyone who studied psychology, even in our own country or in the world in general, knows that there have been some pretty unsavory things done in the name of science that you could never get away with openly today. So, the fact that they would choose to weaponize this, I mean, this is the concept for the Manchurian Candidate, the Born Identity series, so on and so forth. But it is a reality, truth in plain sight. And it, so I just wanted to throw that out there. If that is something you're dealing with, if you would like some help, or there's some more research for you to dig into, I hope that helps, and know that I'm always here as always. So with that being said, moving forward into some of the things that I wanted to discuss with you today. And there is a lot here. I understand that. Please know that I have been researching these topics for years and years and years and years, not realizing at the time that my soul was so drawn to it, because it was going to play a huge part in my life's mission and in everything that I was going to do. So I have been listening to stories and getting pieces of the puzzle for a very, very long time, and from a very wide range of sources. This spans nations, political biases, race, religions, denominations, genders. Did I say race already? Literally everything. This crosses over into every aspect of world and life as we know it. So while that can be a little intimidating and a little overwhelming, I choose to look at it as, at this point, there has been a huge mass opening of information. And with the internet and YouTube and things like this, information is completely available to us at the tips of our fingers. That does mean, obviously, that you need to really sharpen your discernment skills. You need to be open to trying to decide what is the motive of someone when they're saying something. What could their potential, what are all of the potentials around this? Because there is a lot of deception. There is a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And I understand that it can be a total minefield, and it's done that way intentionally. You have to understand that these people who have been committing these crimes are massive sociopaths, psychopaths, and they don't want to be caught. They feel that they will never get caught, but they're not going to just walk around with signs on the front of their head saying, I'm one of the bad guys. They're very, very good at trying to deceive you. And, I'll get into that later, but I just wanted to offer to you guys a small dose of some of the information that I have found over the years. I understand that not everybody has that time or stomach/desire to necessarily do that. So if I can give you a large chunk of information that you can start sorting through yourself and see what you think, see what the evidence says to you, I just want to help in that regard. I know that everyone has really busy lives. I know that everyone can be really stressed out. There's a lot going on in the world to be stressed out about. So if I can at least give you a starting point or make it a little bit easier for you, so we can all get on board with ending these insane practices and bringing these, sociopaths into the light, that's what it's all about. So to start out with, I wanted to discuss with you guys, please look into the Hampstead Coverup. This was over in the UK, where this was actually the first SRA testimony that I ever saw, and it'll jar you. It jarred me, and it's a brother and sister. Excuse me, as I mentioned, not feeling too great. A brother and sister who, as young children, their police interviews, their police testimonies that they were giving in regards to their father, who had been secretly the head of a cult that was run out of their school, that their mother knew nothing about, and that they had 20 special children who would be taken for these special activities and events. And one second. Ooh, gotta love that altitude up here in Colorado. But their testimony was originally emailed to a group, or to some people who were trying to help these children. They had corroborating evidence. They had corroborating, their testimonies aligned with one another. And there was a lot of very shocking information there. By the end of it, you'll see if you choose to watch the interviews yourself, you'll see where the detective starts steering them and starts trying to push them towards actually recanting their testimony out of fear. And there's a lot of really good analysis out there where you can see, I mean, their first batch of testimonies is information that no child should know. And we're talking anatomically correct things children of that age should have no idea about, including, these satanic rituals that they should have no knowledge about as well. And as you see their demeanor and as you see the way that they're talking, and then you see how it starts to curve with the leading of the investigator, it gives you a really good starting place for dealing with ritual abuse and how much of it is also intertwined and locked up with law enforcement and court systems. And, it goes all the way up into politics. Like I said, it's in everything. So you can see where they're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to protect each other. And these kids, unfortunately, because they were able to get them to recant and say that they made it all up, the mother had to flee the country, and the children were given back to their father, who was abusing them. And I should say that when this case was going on, they never did a criminal case. They tried to try it in family court. And when you hear the things that they're alleging, there's no reason why a case like this should have ever been tried in family court. And as we talk about later with CPS corruption, family courts have special loopholes that they're very suspect to begin with. And I'll link some videos below talking about that if you're interested as well. But it should have never been tried in family court. They never looked into, I mean, there was plenty of things that they could have, investigated about the people within the school who the children were alleging were a part of this abuse as well. It would have been very easy to go to the houses and see, if they knew where these things were actually at, look for distinguishing body marks that the children had discussed. And none of that was ever done. So that's, if a child is making these claims, why would you not investigate it unless you're trying to cover it up? So these children are currently back with their abusive father, and he's putting on quite a show over in Ireland, from what I can understand, trying to take people who have been trying to fight to get these kids out of his care, trying to take them to court, saying that they're ruining his life and making a big show of it, and not even addressing the issues that need to be addressed. So within that, this also ties back into, even though this is an older case, there's still current things going on with it that we should be aware of here in the United States. There's a woman named Savine Mcneil who was a part of the initial group really advocating to get these kids out of his care. And one of the people who I believe they were emailing these testimonies to advocates who could help them. And in one instance, it got copied to a blog writer who ended up posting it and sharing it online. So it was never meant to be out in the public, but once it's there, it's there. And she's in court right now, and they're just trying to completely slander her and take her down and bury her. And everything around it is very suspect, very, I mean, you have to look yourself. Again, I'll link some stuff below and you can see what you think for yourself. But her, as well as, oh my goodness, I should have it here. Something Powers Disney. It'll be linked below, but she's in a court case right now with the father of this case, and they're just advocating, the testimony of these children has been seen millions and millions of times. So it is a national outcry of trying to stop this. And this is where we can really put our foot down and demand that some action be taken, and to demand that an investigation be done, even though most of the evidence may and probably already is buried. but there's still going to be enough there to, I mean, there's already enough there. Any person in their right mind would have tried to convict or at least investigate. So the Hampstead cover-up is a great starting point. Melanie Shaw is also someone, it's such a really sad story. She was a victim of ritual abuse in a care home, which is kind of a version of a foster home over in the UK. And when I talked about before, they do these royal commissions where they investigate these things and try and offer compensation to the victims. Well, this Melanie Shaw never took the money. And because a lot of the times this money comes with a gag order where you're not allowed to reveal names for issues of national security, especially when a perpetrator is still alive. And so these gag orders kind of protect them and manage the situation. Well, when someone doesn't take the money and doesn't agree to be bound by a gag order, they become a real threat. So Melanie Shaw was actually brought up on bogus charges, tried in a secret court, and she has served the longest solitary confinement sentence of anyone in Britain, or I can't remember exactly where she is, but over in the UK as well. She's served 22 months in solitary confinement, and she's actually come past when she was supposed to be released, and everyone was trying to figure out why she hasn't been released. There's a big movement over there for justice for Melanie Shaw, and to get her pulled out, she was able to relay, a lot of abuse and negative things that have continued to go on with her as she's been in custody. But once she came past her time to be released, then they started saying that she set fire to her mattress and then set fire to something else. And so now, because of that, they're retrying her, and they're trying to put her in a maximum security prison with sex offenders and the worst kind of people you can imagine for setting her mattress on fire. And it's just, there's a lot to it that really doesn't make any sense, but it's going on now. And just like with Savine Mcneil, even though these things are going on over the pond, as they say, these people who are standing up for justice, who are trying to expose these things that are going on and are being severely threatened, and they're trying very hard to shut them down. If we don't come to their aid, if we don't demand justice, they have every ability to do that. And if we don't stand up for them now, who's going to protect us when these people continue to, don't wait until it's something that directly is affecting you, because it is directly affecting you. If you start to open your eyes to the business plan of what it is, to have ultimate power, to be able to do whatever you want, and to profit off of all of us. We are all affected by this, and we need to stand up for one another. We need to look at the corruption of what's going on. I think everybody would agree that there is corruption. They've seen it, they've experienced it within many facets of anything that has to do with authority. Not saying that all of it is bad and that there are not good people in those places that are also working really hard to help as well. But we have to hold these people accountable, and we have to be aware of when people are trying to be shut up in a very deliberate manner, because we should be looking at the things that they're saying. Why are they trying so hard and so disproportionately to steer something a certain direction? So yeah, Melanie Shaw. And then as far as things, people who don't believe that this stuff is also happening here in the United States, there's two things that I would encourage you to look into. One is the Blue House, which has to do with a ritual abuse done by a Luciferian cult in Evansville, Indiana, which is small town Indiana, that was fairly recently, and also had a whole lot of really questionable decisions and sweeping under the rug. And I believe they had someone, Levko, they called him Let Him Go Levko at the time, who was notorious for letting sexual predators off the hook, would not prosecute. and he's gone now, and they've been replacing things, and it's coming back to light, and these testimonies are still coming forward, and there's a whole sect of people there who are trying to expose that, and that these things are still going on in that town today, and they're trying to end it. They're trying to save these kids. So the Blue House in Evansville, Indiana. There's also the Franklin Coverup, which was an older one, an older case as well, that was in Nebraska, dealing with the Franklin Credit Union, and a whole large slew of politicians and high-level people who were caught up in that. And David Schurter is a great source for getting real information on that. He experienced it. He lived there. He dealt with a lot of these people firsthand, and he's a survivor of SRA himself, and is very open and graciously trying to help those of us who are not aware of what's going on to see the reality of it and how we can help and how we can cope. And he's been really putting his neck out there as well. And we really need to come alongside of them and support them in what they're doing, because they've given up everything. That's what you have to understand, is when you see, like, really look at what some of these witnesses and what some of these whistleblowers are saying. Look at the whole history. Look at what has happened to their lives, the relationships that they've lost, the jobs that they lost. They have no money. That, you know, they are giving up everything and still experiencing death threats and a whole slew of horrible things that happen to them. What do they gain from that? You know, so many people want to say, oh, they're just making it up, or, you know, attention or whatever. These people are not looking for attention. When you really look at what they're saying, when you really look at what has happened in their life and is continuing to happen in their life, would they willingly choose to do that? Why? What is the gain? Or is it more likely that they actually are telling the truth and they're giving up everything because the people who are about to be exposed for it are fighting tooth and nail to remain in the dark? I mean, there are any assortment of quotes out there that you can see of how afraid some of these high power people are of getting caught. The ones who are afraid of getting caught. Many feel that they're untouchable and they'll never get caught. I don't believe that at all. And I'm sure as hell going to make sure I fight as hard as I can to expose as much as I can to as many people as I can to make sure that that doesn't happen. As long as I'm alive, you know, it will never be forgotten. And I will always be doing more research and digging. And again, you know, as you'll see, these things span so far. People who don't know each other, decades apart from one another. There's no way these things have been said decades apart from each other, from people who didn't know each other before the internet was even around, when you even had the ability to hear something and say, oh, I want to jump on that. And, well, you know, whatever, you'll see as you get into it that there's no coincidences. And, you know, what do you think some of the information is telling you? What do you think is going on? I mean, that's ultimately what you have to decide. And I don't want you to believe it for yourself. I want you to have the information for yourself. I want you to chew on it yourself and decide what you think is real. And know that as you do that, you're going to continue to see little pieces coming out, and falling into place, and see what the stories comes together for you to see, because the truth is the truth, and it's going to come out one way or another. So again, going along with current cases that are going on, I know I've talked about it before, but everything that's going on with Voodoo Donuts, and this also ties into a whole cast of characters right now, where it started with this gentleman, Michael Whalen. He's also on Twitter at Vegan Mikey, and he came forward claiming to have been at a party where the owners of Voodoo Donuts brought in children at the end of the evening, and they were ushered into a room where he had already seen sexual things going on. And he, being a victim of satanic ritual abuse himself as a child, got really triggered and freaked out and wanted to leave and tried to leave. And his life has been threatened ever since. And he's been on the run, and he's just been trying to expose it, because for him it was completely unacceptable to see these things going on, and he wanted to stop it, and he's trying desperately to. He claims that Macaulay Culkin was at this party, and you can see that there's also a slew of information coming out about Macaulay Culkin, where he has a lot of ties to, I mean, on his own blog, he calls it bunny ears or something, which is symbolic for devil horns. Isn't that clever? Bunny ears, devil horns. And he is obsessed with it. And he also had a band called Pizza Underground, which, if you don't know what pizza is referred to in when it comes to pedophilia, the FBI had a known list of code words and symbols that pedophiles use. Pizza was one for pedophilia, cheese pizza referring to young girls. And this all ties back into Voodoo Donuts because it is also attached to a club, called Dante's, and it used to have a pizza parlor attached to it called Pizza Slut. And Macaulay Culkin has a band, used to be Underground Pizza. I'm sorry, I'm brain farting right now, but I'll put it all in the description as well. Just a lot of really strange things. And he's got a shirt that he sells that has a pentagram, which is normally it will have the goat head in it, and he put a bunny head in it. You know, how clever of him. But just a lot of weird things. His opening blog on his bunny ears page is literally a bloodletting ritual prayer to Baphomet, who is a satanic deity. So there's a lot of weird connections with that. He kind of, right after all of this came out, he kind of has been, it almost seems mockingly, he is tied with Voodoo Donuts and Seth Green, and there's actually a donut that Voodoo Donuts made for him that of his likeness, and he posted something of a friend eating it. And Voodoo Donuts also ties in with something we'll talk about later, but with Franklin Graham, who is Billy Graham's son. And the day after Michael Whalen came forward telling his story, Franklin Graham posted a picture of himself at Voodoo Donuts in Portland with the caption saying, "Check out these killer donuts." Now, if you don't know about Voodoo Donuts, I'm not going to say something one way or another. I understand being funny and gimmicky and, having your market. And, voodoo is, a fun thing for people to play around with and whatever, as far as themes go. When you look at this place, one, you can order a dozen donuts in a baby coffin, literally an actual wooden coffin that is made for babies. They have, let me see here, some of their donuts names are Cock and Balls, Triple Penetration, the Chocolate Hole, Salty Semen, they have penis-shaped donuts. They have pentagram donuts. Their whole slogan is this, really disgusting theme of the magic is in the hole. When if you imagine child sodomy, it's just a disgusting play on words. But either way you look at it, even if you don't look at it within the child trafficking realm, why would a Christian leader and the son of Billy Graham choose to go to a place like this? I mean, they even have donuts mocking Jesus, and they're, thinking it's this great fun thing and bragging about it. This was all scrubbed off the internet later. Luckily people had screenshotted it and already shared, and he tried to delete it later and cover his tracks. And, if you felt that it was really innocent, why are you doing that now? And, it all ties into some allegations that Fiona Barnett has made about Billy Graham, his father, and being a pedophile and raping her repeatedly, which I know is very, very hard for some people to believe. And again, I will leave all of the information of what she has and what I've seen so you can go through and decide for yourself. But it's something you need to look into, and you need to hear what Mikey has to say and decide for yourself. That's all I can say. With that also being said, I would highly encourage everyone to also do some digging into Walt Disney into Disney in general. That's another thing that we hold so dear and precious to us that we don't want to let go. We want to hold on to that. But that people within this world have called Walt Disney the Dark Prince of Hollywood, and that he has been subjecting children to witchcraft and to sorcery and to Satanism and to over sexualization from its inception. And the claims that have come out against him and the people who used to work at Disney back then, I mean, they were with the fear of God put into them, told that they needed to portray this very clean and proper image of Walt Disney for the company to continue, and anyone who went against that. But after he passed, and as people have felt more safe coming out, the allegations of things that he's done are pretty disturbing. And if you do a little research into what they also call Club 33, which is in Disney, I don't know if it's at Disneyland and Disney World, both, but it's at one of them. It's a very exclusive club that has a membership waiting list that goes on forever and ever, which they say is actually just a filtering process, because it's a club for these elite pedophiles, for them to be able to do what they want. And if you do any research into the Masons and what being a 33-degree Mason is, and tiled checkered floors and all these different symbology that you can find, it's not hard to draw the conclusions in your mind as to what may be going on in there. And I would just strongly urge you to do a little research and be very careful of what you're putting in front of your children. Be very careful what you're exposing them to, because the technology that they have, it's beyond what we could even know, obviously. But if you know that someone is a violent pedophile, why would you even risk putting anything that they're going to present in front of your child or give to them? It's your own choice, but look into it. It's not hard to find. And then, I think I might have missed I did. Almost missed the whole page. The next thing I wanted to talk about is there is this another case going on currently, which is NXIVM. And I'm not sure how many of you have been following it. I haven't been following a lot of the more recent stuff going on with it, but it is highly tied in with what we are talking about. When you look at their unsealed indictment for Allison Mack, who is a Smallville actress, she is being tried for this, and it specifically lists child trafficking in the charges. And I'm sure everyone has heard about the branding that they've done to these women near their genitals, which is also a common theme that you'll see in SRA situations. But I wrote here, look into the NXIVM case, which is not spelled the way it sounds. It's all capital letters. It's Roman numerals. It's NXVIM, but they pronounce it NXIVM, which was supposed to be this self-help improvement group. It's a cult. I don't know what term they use, but it is a cult. And when you look at the information, for anyone who read the 50 Shades of Grey series, tell me that was not meant to be grooming material for these poor wannabe actresses, which is who they were primarily targeting with these B-list actresses. And if you aren't familiar with the term grooming, it's just the process that a predator will use to get a person from point A of gaining their trust and forming that bond, to isolating them and being able to show their true nature and begin abusing them. And if you look at the book series 50 Shades of Grey, which talks specifically about S&M and bondage and all of these things, which, you know what, do your thing. Anyone who knows me knows I am all about, you need to live your life as long as it's not harming anybody else. I know there is any number of fetish or preferences out there for any number of people, that's, you do whatever you need to do unless it's harming another person, and especially when it comes to harming children. But if you read the book, and if you've read the book, you understand the whole process is to romanticize this idea of a rich man who's in power, who falls in love and is damaged, but you can fix him, you can save him, and also there's all this, erotic sexual pleasure tied into it. And if you were someone reading this book when it came out and when it was really popular in its heyday, and then you were presented with this opportunity to join this secret sect within the NXIVM, the higher umbrella, what a perfect way to get these vulnerable women in. And I am so sorry. I'm going to do something really unconventional right now, but I just realized this is about to die and I'm not about to re-record everything, so I have to go run and get my charger. So give me 1 second. Okay. Totally unscripted here, if you couldn't tell. Real life. You guys get to see it. You guys get to see it all. All right, back in business. And now my sickly dry throat is even more dry, so let's all take a mental break. Shake it off. I know there's a lot of heavy information here, but I trust and believe you guys have the capacity and ability to handle it. But it is important to take breaks. And it is important to fill your life with joy. And it is very important to not let it overwhelm you, because it can be very dark, obviously. So, then getting on to another case where I believe it was a highway patrolman or state trooper over on the East Coast. Did I put it here? No, I don't have it here. It will be in description. But this man was highly decorated, highly revered within the police force that he was working with. And it was found that he had raped a 4-year-old child. He was caught. So, these things are happening every day around us, and little bits are getting put out into the news, and you can find them. And it shows you that these things are happening, that they are intertwined into every aspect and facet of life. And we have to be also very understanding that that's why a lot of these victims don't go to the police, or have gone to the police. I'm sorry, why they don't trust police, because they have gone to them and asked for help and had issues. Or a lot of times the police officers and people within the judiciary system have been their offenders, have been their victimizers. And even something that you'll see with Michael Whalen's case and the Voodoo Donuts case, that is something that they're working on doing, is also demanding that these are given actual court cases, that they are, these charges are being brought and bringing investigations forward. And it's just, it just needs to be done. And, that kind of brings it into a larger spectrum of what's currently going on as well right now, that ties very strongly into sex trafficking, and more specifically child sex trafficking, and that is our churches. All churches are susceptible to this, and anyone who's paid attention to the news in the past decade or 20 years has seen, in particular, the Catholic Church has been the one that's, at least, I'm sure everyone has seen at least one article or two, one news title, one news story that's come across the airwaves of these priests who have been abusing children. And it has gotten so out of hand and so out in the open now. I mean, this stuff has been going on for decades. Again, it's just coming forward now because literally by the thousands, hundreds at a time, but thousands at a time as well, these victims who are now older are coming forward and demanding restitution. And if you look at the money that the Catholic Church has paid out in settlements to these victims, you see that they admit their culpability. You see, there's also a gentleman I'll link below. I don't have his name, but I'm going to look it up right now because it's that. But this gentleman was abused by the Catholic Church. Hold on. And it's not what I want. He's an SRA survivor. There he is, James Shanahan. And he just recently did an interview with the YouTube page Spencer and Ty Present Out of the Gate that I'll link below, obviously. He is such an eloquently spoken gentleman. And I would recommend watching his interview first, maybe, and then I'll also link the story, the article below that he wrote in regards to the letter that the Catholic Church wrote to him in response, and then the allegations that he's made, and it will just baffle you. He's so well spoken. He has such a kind heart. He has been able to find such strength and peace and joy through what he went through, and it is horrific what he went through. But what he really pushes home and shows with this letter that he actually received is that the Catholic Church has acknowledged the factual nature of what he is saying and apologize for not dealing with it more appropriately sooner. But when you read the allegations of what he's claiming, and then to hear that the Catholic Church acknowledges that it's true, should really make you think. And it's the first step into seeing that this is an organized, very dark religion that is there. It's very much like Fight Club. These Luciferians, the people who are tied to this ritual abuse, it's very much the first rule about Fight Club is there is no Fight Club. The second rule about Fight Club is there is no Fight Club. And that's how this works. And once these people are exposed, they have to be dealt with one way or another. Oftentimes they are killed off because they understand that, what their credo is do what thou will, or willst, any version of that. Do what thou will, but don't get caught. And the Catholic Church, unfortunately, for the rest of society and for these poor children, they have their own diplomatic and national sovereignty. The Vatican is its own city-state. It's the religious headquarters for, I'll just come out and say it, at the very, very top, they are run by Satanists. And if you look at Pope Francis' response to what has been going on, his disgusting twist of words and lack of trying to deal with it, claiming that we need to respond in silent prayer and we need to be prayerful about it, and that he goes on citing that the great accuser, which is what the enemy is called, Satan, but he is referring, usually that exact term that Catholics will understand in that way, referring to the victims who are accusing the church of these crimes when they were children. Like, how disgusting is that? That you, as the leader of the church, are calling a child, you have to look at that person when they were a child and calling them the enemy, calling them the great accuser, rather than taking the mountains of information, that's there, they know it, and it goes into so many other, the Catholic Church, and I just want to say to all my Catholic friends, I know there are great Catholics out there. I know that it's like it's so much bigger than that. So I don't want to ever make it seem like I'm attacking one thing, or if you are a part of, this goes across all churches, and I'll get into more. It's not just Catholic, it's not just Protestant, it's not just within Christianity, and it's also, it's within atheism, it's within Buddhism, it crosses over into everything. And we have to be so careful of who we are giving our authority to, who we are trusting as the authority, who we are trusting their words. And that's why if you are a believer, you will know them by their fruits. We have to look at the fruits of what is being produced. And the Catholic Church, I think, right now is showing a lot of rotten fruit that has been stemming for a while. And it's something that I hope that most of my Catholic friends out there are wanting to deal with and are wanting to face, that these children need to be protected. And it's getting kind of dark here. Let go. There we go. Much better. Now I can read. And this gets me into something that I know a lot of people are going to want a little more clarification on, and is jarring to people. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about Billy Graham. He is a huge icon within the Christian community. And to hear someone claim that he was abusing them for a very long time when they were younger, most people are going to want to fight that. And I understand that. And again, I was obviously not abused by Billy Graham, so I'm not claiming off of something that I know. I'm going off of the testimony and information from people that I find credible, from information that ties into a wider spectrum of things, where this is where the dots connect, that I can see. We have to not put anybody above being a master deceiver. And, like I said, these people, these sociopaths, are really good at what they do. And they really, really, really get off on the idea of deceiving people. And if you haven't heard of anything, this thing called duper's delight that they will do when they feel that they're getting away with fooling people, with lying straight to their face, they can't help but kind of contort a little bit sometimes. But Fiona Barnett, who I've talked about before, so I won't get on too much of a tangent, she is such a wealth of information. She's got a website called Pedophiles Down Under, and they throw so much documentation out there. And she is constantly on Twitter calling people out and asking for people to address things. And she has been doing this for decades and decades and decades, and has lost everything, and has been fighting this, because there are just some people that when they go through these things, they get pissed off, and they're your worst nightmare. And I feel that that's where she is. And she's also, she's gone up against and is currently going up against Craig the Sawman Sawyer with Vets for Child Rescue, and I talked about that before in a earlier video as well, but and that just keeps getting more and more complicated and more tangled up, and you can start to see the fruits of that falling apart, where, Vets for Child Rescue, we're supposed to have this documentary coming out. The storyline has changed so much, with all of a sudden his daughter coming into the picture after these allegations had come forward on her own social media of abuse, and backtracking, and just I'll link the tweet threads down for you to follow, because it's much easier for you to follow the line of conversation and thoughts as they go through what everyone is saying and what's happening. And again, to decide for yourself who's telling the truth, to decide for yourself what the information is telling you. And the thing that breaks my heart about it is, these people are filtering in all of the well-intentioned people, trying to help, myself included, and making them feel like they have an avenue to make a difference, to make them feel like they're able to stand up strong and fight behind some strong, powerful people, and to be deceiving, and to be, there's a whole lot of financial, how do you say it? How do you say it? With, there's a lot of money that has been donated to Vets for Child Rescue, and there's not a lot to show for it. And there's a lot of people claiming that they, that they're saying that the person who has the footage of the documentary that they were filming for Netflix, allegedly, is holding on to the documentary, because they haven't been paid. And when you see the financial trail and you see how much money has been donated, there's no reason why that should have occurred. And that's, why we haven't seen a documentary yet. And, it may also be because there is a lot of flack that they've been doing this for 2 years, and with the amount of money that's gone into it, and they've only made, I think they said 14 arrests and had 2 people saved, which someone is also claiming were, not necessarily as much of a victim as maybe presented in the film. I can't say, I haven't seen it. Nobody has really seen it, but it's all very, very, very fishy, and it all reeks tremendously. And I would encourage people to do your research before you choose to give your money to anybody, and also before you choose to give your money to Vets for Child Rescue. And that's just my personal experience and my word of advice. And again, if you go back and watch my previous videos, you'll see that I was a huge supporter, and very much someone who was, I was volunteering with them. So I have a little bit of insider knowledge and experience. So that's just what I would say, going with caution. And I do believe that it's all going to be brought to light, and we're going to see a lot. So, again, that's just it's important to prepare your mind for that when you're dealing with these things. Also, the next portion of that I would get into is Hillsong Church, Hillsong United. And I'm sorry, I believe Hillsong United is the band. I think Hillsong is the church. But, I love their praise music. Even when I was going through my dark decade of the soul, as I say, Hillsong had some wonderful praise songs that, even not being in the faith, really touched me, and I really loved still to listen to at that point. And so to hear these allegations come out, again, it's just like, it can feel like a punch to the stomach. It can just feel like your insides are being ripped out from inside of you, and it sucks. But that's why it's so, so, so important. And what a lot of, with all of these people who come forward, especially when it has to do with faith, we have to not put anybody up on a pedestal above ourselves and above God. If you have that, if you have a faith in God. But since we're talking about churches, if you are being triggered and reacting to that, I'm going to assume you have a faith in God. And we cannot put people above that, because it can devastate our entire faith when we worship man instead of really living in our power as having the Holy Spirit with us here on earth and trying to have that direct one-on-one relationship with God and with your faith. You don't need a priest. You don't need these people to tell you what God is saying. Yes, you're going to hear it, come in all different ways. You should hear God in all different facets of your life from many different people. And it is good to have a shepherd, but you need to be so very, very, very careful about who you choose to let shepherd you. And you have to be willing to look at what is being said, even if it's something that seems so unbelievable to you. Are you willing to open up your paradigm to see that, yes, corruption has happened? And, as as someone just told me recently, while people are having a hard time trying to really wrap their head around what's going on with Billy Graham and with the Hillsong Church, it can be very hard to believe and just say, no, there's no way. That's got to be fake. They're lying. It's not true. But do you think that the Catholics felt any more, any less shocked at these allegations coming out about the people that they have believed and trusted as well? So it's just, again, it's very important to leave your viewpoint open and to be prepared that reality as you thought you knew it may not have been as straightforward as you thought. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to see, and we're going to continue to experience as these cases are brought forward, as more allegations are made, as this is all brought more into the light, because it will be brought into the light. It has to. And how we are able to not attach to certain beliefs and things so strongly that it devastates us and completely derails us when our worldview is shattered and we have this cognitive dissonance. The more we can really take in information, not necessarily believing it as true or false right away, just literally taking in all of the information and processing it. If you have a faith, praying about it, seeing what your inner voice, what the Holy Spirit is telling you. If you don't have a faith, what's your discernment, what your gut feeling, what your intuition is telling you about these things. As you meditate on it, as you marinate on it, and give it the space to breathe and wait for those other nuggets to come forward to either validate what you're hearing or disprove it. And that will be an ongoing process. But that is why, for me, this is a collection of information that I have, again, been processing and taking in for years. And when you see these things connecting, that there's no other way in the world for them to be connecting than to believe what is being said, that there is a very, very powerful elite, so-called elite, just meaning wealthy, criminal cartel of psychopaths who get off on having ultimate power and on, child sex trafficking. Children is the highest grossing black market out there over organs, guns, and drugs. It is the highest grossing black market. And it's a reusable commodity. You can, you sell a drug, you sell a gun, you sell an organ, you get one use out of it. If you have a child or you have a victim for sex trafficking, you can keep making money over and over and over and over and over and over again on that commodity until it runs out, So, and on top of that, these women are able to reproduce and create more commodity for you. And again, it's a dark, slippery slope that goes down and down and down and down and down the further you want to go. And I'm not here to shock and overwhelm anyone with that information yet, but you have to see that this is a business plan to these people. You have to see that this is about control. And on the other end of it, on the spiritual side of it, these people have a very solid understanding of dark occult knowledge. And they use this dark occult knowledge, which just means hidden, to keep the true information, to keep the true sciences, to keep their beliefs hidden from us. And they also have seen and experienced, and they believe in these demons. They have to use these sacrifices and these depraved acts to conjure up these spirits, these demonic entities, to give them the power to continue doing what they're doing. But getting into Hillsong, I'm going to try, I know this has gone long, so I'm going to try and speed it up, or maybe end with a little bit and go on to a part 3 later. But with Hillsong, there are 2 things that I would direct you to. The first thing is that the founder of Hillsong's church, Brian Houston, his father was a head pastor there at their, he was a pastor beforehand with the Assemblies of God. Yes, with the Assemblies of God. So Brian Houston is one of the founders of Hillsong Church, and his father was, Frank Houston, has had 9 people come out accusing him of, 9 boys, they're now men, accusing him of raping them and of continuing to abuse them throughout their childhood until they hit puberty, at which point one of the victims claims he became completely uninterested in him. Well, Brian Houston, the founder of Hillsong Church, was directly responsible when the information first started coming out, when they were with the Assemblies of God Church, with taking that information to the authorities, and was also in charge of the investigation into his father, which anyone would agree, I think, is a huge conflict of interest. So the allegations have been verified. It was confirmed that this happened, and victims were paid restitution. But what people were upset about was the way that Brian Houston dealt with the situation, and also in him not recusing himself from the investigation, or at least identifying the conflict of interest that was there. Now, this was all done before Hillsong was even founded, so there's not a direct tie into Hillsong there, but you have to see the full story, to where his father is a proven pedophile with 9 victims. He covered it up. They claim that he was asked to stop preaching, but then there's information of him preaching a month later after this happened. And they have no documentation of showing that he was ending. He was allowed to end his career in honor and with his full retirement packages and all of that. And, he's since died, and I'll let you look at it yourself. But what that does add more information into the story for you is that there is another woman who has come forward and did go to the Royal Commission in Australia when her children told her about being victims of, and not just pedophilia, of ritual abuse at Hillsong Church. And these children were young, and they had no way of even knowing what was going on. Again, this happens with a lot of ritual abuse. And this was, again, back in the 70s and 80s, I believe. I wish I'd written it down here, but this was a while ago as well when this initially came out. And at this time, again, it was before the internet was even available. So this mom had to go to the library after her children are telling her about what they have experienced, and that they are in a room and there was a star on the floor in a circle, and there were candles at the points of the star, and everyone's in black robes and chanting, and the things that went on from there. But then she specifically talks about how they kept talking about the sticks, and she couldn't understand. And it wasn't until she finally started doing some research and finding more on Aleister Crowley, and that it was just, they were talking about wands and, just things that children should not have known about at that point. And yes, obviously now Harry Potter's everywhere. And again, what is that all about? What are they trying to usher our children towards, But I will link her name is Donna. I'll link her most recent interview that she gave, and that she actually had to go on the run when she tried to give this information to the Royal Commission. The way that they were treated, the things that happened. It's one wild turn after another. Yet you just are like, you cannot believe that these things are going on. But it makes sense when, if you believe, when you look at it as if you're this mega church trying to save face, trying to maintain your front, and everyone may have different views about mega churches and where that falls within faith, and not saying that there aren't good mega churches out there and bad mega churches, but anytime you have a lot of power and a lot of publicity and a lot of power up for grab, people are going to want to do everything that they can to hold on to that, and you're going to attract psychopaths into that position. That's what they're all about. And again, that goes back to Dr. Catherine Horton. I highly encourage you to watch what she has to say. She literally has a doctorate in these things, and she talks about how that is ultimately, when you have large positions of power, anything with power, eventually psychopaths will work their way up towards the top. And that's how we've gotten ourselves into this situation that we have right now. And we need to check these. We need to get these people out of the positions of power where they are, so that normal people can go on about life and business the way that we want to. We have the power, we have the ability, we have the numbers. We just have to wake up. We have to open our heads. We have to be willing to look and do the research and open our awareness, open our perception to how we may have already been indoctrinated ourselves. How have the TV shows, the schooling that we experienced, our college degrees, our religious and, everything that we experience every day, our social media, everything is coming into our brain. How have we already maybe formed our perceptions so strongly, and we can't even release our fingers just a little bit to see that, like I've said before, it's much easier to lie to somebody than to convince them they've been lied to. And what end of the spectrum are you going to be on? Are you too proud to admit that you've been lied to and you believed a lie? Is it too hurtful and damaging to you? Or can you admit when you were wrong about something? I know I've been wrong about stuff. I will continue to be wrong about stuff, but I try my hardest to constantly be doing the research, looking at the whole picture, seeing how it ties into everything. And also, when I don't know something, I'll try and tell you that this is my opinion, or I don't know, or this is my experience, or, that you have to decide for yourself. That's ultimately what it's all about. I'm just trying to give you the breadcrumbs. So look at her testimony, look at what she has to say, take it into perspective with what you know now and what the articles will say about Brian Houston and his father, and the chart, how it all started from there. And, what is there even a remote possibility that this happened, or that this could be happening still? And, or, I think that there is plenty of evidence to at least make it something that we should entertain. And, that's just for people who may be skeptical of Fiona Barnett. I myself have been following her information for a very, very long time. And when you see her whole breadth of work, the amount of work that she's been doing to expose pedophiles, the amount of advocacy work that she does to help victims to recover through their DID and to try and integrate, she has done everything she has done is for that cause and for helping people within that spectrum. she is highly credible to myself and many others, but I understand that many of you may not be familiar with her. I also know now, with everything that's going on with Craig Sawyer, that he's also in direct attack mode back at her, which was my moment of, okay, now I see your fruits. If you're claiming to be someone who is advocating for child sex victims and trafficking victims, if you have heard anything about what this woman has said and what this woman has done over her lifetime and what she experienced as a child, to say the things that he said, to make the allegations that he's making about her, is just salacious and infuriating to me. But I understand how that is necessary for him if he's trying to save face, because she is being very, very, very outspoken towards him. And now he's, doing the same to her. So I understand, being someone new coming into this information, just, I want you to look at what she has to say. I want you to look at the information. I want you to decide for yourself. And if you don't believe she's as credible as I do, you may not take what she's saying as strongly. I believe what she's saying, and the things that she's saying about Hillsong United is that they are a child trafficking front, that they are targeting single women and vulnerable children and doing horrible things, and they need to be dealt with. So that is what she's saying. That's what other people are saying. And again, I'll link those below. You look at it for yourself and decide. So much here. So the next thing that I'll go quickly through the rest, but I've talked before about Jeffrey Epstein. This one is for all my St. Thomas people out there. Everyone is familiar out there with Pedophile Isle, Little St. James. And when I moved out there, it wasn't made clear to me. I don't think anyone really understood, or at least not the people in my social circle, what that really meant. It's not a guy paying, 15 and 16-year-old girls to come over there and, give massages and escorty type things. No, this is full on the belly of the beast, dark, dark, dark stuff. If you've been on a boat, you can go around his island, and I have seen myself a creepy temple door, gross looking, and I didn't understand. I didn't know at the time what it was. I didn't know what I know now, and it, it's going to be hard to go back and be around something like that. But he is a very big player in what's going on, Jeffrey Epstein, and his Lolita Express, and all of the politicians and celebrities and princes. And there's his butler's little black book that's out there as well, naming names of people who fly on his private plane, which have sexual favors inside the plane to get to his island, where it's also been alleged that he did to cover his own ass, like a smart sociopath, knowing that he's with other sociopaths. And you always have to cover yourself when people are going to be fearful that something and can expose them. He was recording everything that was going on as his own life insurance policy, so that if any time they tried to take him out, and this is why he was able to get the plea deals that he was, this is why he's been working with authorities. I don't know where he falls and how it's going to all play out, but there's some really nasty things to be said about Little St. James and Jeffrey Epstein out in the Caribbean. And if you live out in that area, do your research, learn what's going on in our neighborhood. It's up, it's at the top. We're in the middle of the hub, and you need to be aware so you can protect yourself, so you can be safe. And with that being said, for myself, please everyone know that I am far from suicidal. I'm in good health besides being sick right now. And, I understand that I'm going to continue to be going up against some really nasty people, and I'm going to be trying to take their highest form and source of money right now, which is children. That is their currency. Look at the Taken movie series. That shows you a little bit of what is actually going on in a movie format. And it's not obviously exact, but I understand that I'm not afraid. Will save these kids. I will do everything in my power to take these people out, because they need to be taken out. But if you live in that part of the world, You need to be aware. Arm yourself. Protect yourself. Be aware. And then in a very similar regard, I just want to also speak out to all my people who are in the homosexual community. There is a huge push right now within the LGBT community for pedophiles to put themselves underneath your blanket. They are trying to convince us now, and they're going through psychology. And if you've seen, there's a TED Talks video that is so disgusting I couldn't even watch it because it just made me want to reach through the computer and do not nice things to this woman who's talking. But they're trying to convince us that pedophilia is a mental disorder or a sexual preference, and that non-offending pedophiles should actually be commended for not offending, and that it's look into Mambla if you're not familiar with that already. Hopefully enough of you are, but for those of you who don't know, that's North American Man Boy Love, all the acronyms. And these people actually put out magazines talking about teaching people how to groom and how to develop that special relationship with this child that you're trying to groom, and how it's normal, and how these children actually have the ability to love you in return in a romantic way, and to normalize this, and to be pushing that there should be legal rights for this, which also pushes into, I am not claiming that all Muslims are, fall under this umbrella either, but as a part of Muslim religion, pedophilia is a part of Muslim beliefs, and Muslim culture. Muslim nations do practice pedophilia. You can marry children, and there is something going on right now as well with that in our country, where there's a big push to bring these immigrants into our country so that, and they use refugees and all these things that are going to pull at our heartstrings. And that I love everybody, and I'm all for inclusiveness, and our country was built on bringing people in, and we're a melting pot. If you know me, you know that. I'm saying, though, that there is a dark agenda behind some of this, and they're trying to bring these and they very well, and they are extremist portions of the Muslim faith, but they're bringing them over, and they're bringing them over so that they can change legislation, so that they can say, oh, well, he's now a citizen, and he's here with his child bride, but it's okay where they're from, and it's okay with their religion. So who are we to tell them that they can't do that anymore here? How can he now has his child bride who's maybe 13, 14, 6. It doesn't matter. These children are married that young in some of these parts of the world. So are we going to continue to allow them to have sex with their wife, which in this country is pedophilia and is child rape, and trying to blur that line and trying to give us a reason to change legislation so that they can normalize pedophilia in this country? And there's a huge push for normalizing pedophilia. Please be on the lookout. Pay attention to what is coming across, what is coming out. And again, my homosexual friends and gay and bi, and I love you all, but be aware that they are trying to use you. They're trying to come in underneath your umbrella. And if you have ever experienced child sexual abuse yourself, or if you have ever talked to or listened to the words that have come out of someone's mouth who has been abused as a child sexually, how damaging, how scarring, how almost irreversibly damaged you are. It's enough to make my blood boil. It is not a consenting, normal, healthy relationship, and these pedophiles want to make people believe that, and make themselves believe that this is okay, and that these kids want it, and that these kids are consenting, and that these kids enjoy it. And it is physically, mentally impossible for them to be able to do that. And these people are not willing to look at what these people are saying and how much it has damaged them and hurt them. So will never, ever, 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 ever say that pedophilia is okay. Ever. And anyone who's trying to say that it is, we're going to have a wonderfully long conversation. I welcome you to try and convince me and show me how you really think that that is okay. Moving forward. But please just don't let them in. Guard yourselves from them trying to take over your movement. And then I'll just, I'm just going to wind down. This has been a lot, but what I really also want to say is that here in this country, please, everybody, please be aware that there's a lot of corruption within CPS, within Child Protective Services, or whatever variation of that you have in your state, with adoption agencies, with foster care especially. These are all just hubs and ways of them to procure children. Literally, people can say, all you have to do is call and make an anonymous tip, or they can claim to make an anonymous tip and have a reason to come in and try and take your children. Do not let them take your children. They do not have the authority. Make them have a written warrant signed by a judge, because they won't. Do not let them take your children. I don't care, as long as you're not abusing your kids. And again, there are good people within CPS. There are good people in all of these facets who may be completely oblivious to what's going on, but I suspect that people who are in these fields have seen some corruption and understand what I'm saying. And those are the good ones who are going to be able to help us and are going to be able to move forward. But we have to understand that is a main way of them grabbing children. And when you see the statistics of what happens to foster kids, how medicated they are, how overdrugged they are, many of them are not even reported missing until they come up in a child sex trafficking bust, or are found dead later, and they were never even reported missing. And these kids just go missing through the cracks all the time in foster care. No one is taking accountability. No one is speaking out for them. The parents have no idea where they are. Some of them may have parents who are not looking or paying attention and dealing with their own addictions or, whatever. But many of these parents are searching and trying to get their children back, and don't have any legal rights to do so anymore after you allow yourself to go through child court, through the family court processes, which again, I'll link a video down below kind of exposing the loopholes and how family court actually is a business separate from the judicial system. And it's mind-blowing. Please check that out if you have any interest in learning more, or if you know anyone who's dealing with CPS or family courts, please. But also, I just really want everyone to try and familiarize yourself with these signs of someone who has been sexually abused, ritually sexually abused, and who is afraid to talk. These people are very afraid. There's been several people who have come forward talking about that children, when they're in school, that pooped themselves and peed their pants and didn't have the ability to, and they were just called stinky at school, and they were socially awkward and isolated, that a lot of times, these are symptoms of being abused, and they need help. They need someone to love them and come alongside them. Teach your children what to look for. Teach them to be kind to people like that. Teach yourself to be aware so you can be a safe, loving presence in their life, because they need it. Also, to be aware of the signs of sociopaths and the things that they say and the way that they act, so you can actively guard yourself from people like that. Because like I said, they are master deceivers, they are master manipulators, but they have very distinct ways of giving themselves up because they don't have empathy. They have the inability to show empathy. So you can spot them and you can beat them. Also with any charities and, a lot of these foundations, and not to be getting political, but, the Clinton Foundation and the ties and the things that were going on with Haiti, and people within the political realm actually getting busted, sex trafficking children out of Haiti and being given pardons. And, the Clinton Foundation's support has dropped 90%. I just saw an article, I'll link it below as well. These people are running scared, but these charities, pedophiles are obviously going to always be drawn to a place where they have access to vulnerable children, always. And it's something that charities don't want to talk about. So we have to be looking. We have to be aware. We have to be discerning and cautious of who we give our support to and who we're allowing to help our children. But what better person than yourself to help with children? Step forward. They're all around us. And that's what I want, I want to end with, is saying that these things are happening globally, but they're also happening locally. I myself, almost every day, am amazed at what I'm learning, and the people in my own circle that I'm seeing are affected by these, that I didn't have the awareness or ability to tie that back into at that point, and then to see it now. We have this going on right now. Every neighborhood, every community, every country, we have to be aware, and we have to give these people our support, and we also have to be prepared to take down the people who are perpetrating it, and standing strong without fear and saying that this is not okay and not on our watch, because silent consent is not where you want to be. You do not want to be someone who is giving your silent consent in a matter this strong. In my opinion, if nothing else, keep researching, look, see what you think, and share the information, and share it with me, and let's open a dialogue about it. The more we can share, the more we can learn, the better. And I would also just say another topic that I will get into as soon as I can. It's kind of out there too, but the perfect person to get into it and look into it is Dr. Catherine Horton, and she discusses targeted individuals, and that ties in hand in fist with trafficking and with ritualistic abuse, because the people who are coming forward trying to expose these things, the victims who are being outspoken about it, they are targeted individuals. They are experiencing the same thing that other people are randomly experiencing. And it's something we have to familiarize ourselves with, because we all know someone who's being affected as a targeted individual, and they may not even know it yet. And Dr. Catherine Horton is a brilliant woman. Like I said, she went through Oxford and Cambridge, and she's very well spoken. She's very much grounded in scientific, factual things, and the things that she has documented, the things that she's putting together with her joint investigation, which is a national investigation into millions of people and court cases that they're starting to put together to take down this criminal cartel that is using these advanced weapons that do have patents and that are being used. You get the information in the weaponry and the technology of tomorrow videos and blogs and things that I don't follow, but thanks to other researchers, I get to see, and we get to see the technology that is out there that we're not being told is out there yet. And they are using it to control us. They are using it to keep us sick. They are using it to try and keep people silent. They are using gang stalking techniques. It all plays into a bigger thing. It affects the elderly. It affects children. It affects all of us. And again, educate yourself on what it looks like. Educate yourself on what is really going on, so that you can help the people in your life, or yourself potentially, if you are experiencing that. So with that, I'll end this massively long video, and I'll thank any of you who made it this far, even if it took you a couple chunks. It means the world to me. It means the world to these kids. And again, don't believe anything that I'm telling you off just of what I'm saying. Please look into it yourself, and let's stop this. Let's be Love Warriors united and do what's right. Thanks, guys. Love you.